Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Please subscribe my channel. The air in the television studio was thick with the scent of ozone and anxiety. Julian Vance, a man whose face was as familiar as the evening news, sat behind the polished anchor desk, a single sheet of paper trembling almost imperceptibly in his hand. On the other side of the country, in a dressing room smelling of cold cream and ambition, comedian Leela Cruz applied a final coat of lipstick, a sharp, crimson smile. That night, on her show, Late Hour, Leela had done a segment. It was 7 minutes long, a blistering monologue dissecting Julian's most recent, widely panned primetime special. She'd used his own words against him, splicing clips to highlight contradictions, her wit a scalpel and his legacy the patient. The internet, as it did, had erupted. Her clips went viral. His mentions became a digital graveyard. Now, 24 hours later, Julian was live on his own network. The teleprompter scrolled with the day's headlines, but his eyes were fixed on the camera, a cold fire in their blue depths. He discarded the script. "Last night," he began, his voice a low, deliberate rumble. "A performer, and I use that term loosely, decided to trade in cheap shots for what she calls comedy." He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. She sits in her little bubble of smugness, surrounded by a sycophantic audience that laughs on command and believes her clever editing constitutes a point of view. In her apartment, Leela watched, a bowl of untouched popcorn in her lap. Her producer was texting her, a stream of celebratory fire emojis. She felt no celebration, only a cold knot in her stomach. "She doesn't understand the real world," Julian continued, his jaw tight. "She doesn't understand the weight of the stories we cover here, the lives affected. To her, it's all a punchline, a means to get a trending hashtag and the approval of her coastal elite friends." Leela muted the television. The silence in her room was deafening. The coastal elite jab was a tired trope, but the accusation about the weight of stories, it landed. She thought of her writer's room, the frantic search for the killer joke, the way a complex political issue could be whittled down to a 60-second bit. Was there a weight to what she did? Or was it all just sound and fury? Julian was building to his crescendo. "This isn't about me. This is about the degradation of discourse. It's about replacing substance with snark. They don't want to debate. They want to destroy. They cloak their malice in the banner of comedy, but it's just malice." He finally looked down, as if the passion had spent him. "We will continue to do our jobs, to report the news, to ignore the noise." He segued smoothly into the next story, the perfect professional again. But the damage was done. The war was declared. Leela didn't respond that night, or the next. Her social media team begged for a clapback, a witty gif, anything. She remained silent. She watched the news cycle churn, pundits dissecting Julian's fiery rebuttal, her own fans decrying his thin-skinned attack. 3 nights later, Leela walked onto her stage. The audience cheered, expecting a counteroffensive. She stood behind her podium, the bright lights hiding the circles under her eyes. "So," she began, the audience leaning in, hungry for blood, "a lot of you saw the news this week." A wave of anticipatory laughter. She waited for it to die. "And I've been thinking about what was said, about noise and weight." She paused, her smile fading into something more thoughtful. "He's not entirely wrong." The studio went quiet. "Comedy is sharp. It's supposed to be. It punctures egos, but it can also be lazy. It can be a way to score points without actually saying anything. She looked out at the audience, their confused faces. So instead of another joke, I'd like to try something else. I'd like to have a conversation about why we're all so angry, why we're so sure the other side is acting in bad faith. She didn't mention Julian by name. She didn't replay his clips. She spent the rest of her show talking about the architecture of outrage, how it was engineered to keep us divided and tuning in. It was the quietest, most sober episode of Late Hour ever filmed. The next morning, there was no viral clip. The ratings were mediocre. But in his office, watching the replay, Julian Vance felt a strange sense of defeat. She hadn't fought fire with fire. She had doused his flames with a silence more powerful than any punchline. The war was over before it began. Not with the bang, but with the quiet, unsettling truth.